In the heart of a lively African town filled with the sounds of laughter and bustling marketplaces, there lived a young woman named Alero. The town was a beautiful place where vibrant flowers lined the dusty roads, and majestic trees provided shade for neighbors who gathered to share stories. The scent of fresh bread and roasted maize often filled the air, blending with the cheerful melodies of birds perched on rooftops. Life moved at a steady, joyful pace, and the community was like one big family. Alero was admired by many, not just for her radiant beauty, but for her kind heart and sharp mind. Her warm smile could brighten anyone's day, and she treated everyone with respect, whether they were rich or poor. Despite her gentle nature, Alero had a strong spirit and dreamed of a bright future beyond the simple town life. She lived with her loving father, a quiet and hard-working man, and her stepmother, Neca. Neca was a woman whose beauty was unmatched. Her skin glowed like polished ebony, and her graceful movements often caught the attention of everyone around. But beneath that stunning appearance lay a heart filled with jealousy and deceit. While she played the role of a caring wife and mother figure, her true nature was hidden behind charming smiles and sweet words. Most people were fooled by Neca's outward beauty, but Alero often sensed that her stepmother's heart was not as pure as it seemed. Life in their household was peaceful on the surface, but fate had its twists waiting for Alero. Little did she know that love, betrayal, and heartbreak would soon test her strength and shape her future in unimaginable ways. One bright afternoon, the town was alive with its usual charm. Women wrapped in colourful fabrics bargained loudly with traders, while the scent of roasted corn filled the air. Children played chase along the dusty paths, their laughter blending with the clatter of pots and the occasional neigh of a passing horse. Alero loved coming to the market. The vibrant life of her community brought joy to her heart, and walking through it made her feel connected to everyone around. On this particular day, she carried a basket full of fresh vegetables for her father's evening meal. As she made her way through the busy stalls, a sudden gust of wind swept past, causing a ripe orange to tumble out of her basket. The fruit rolled across the uneven ground and came to a stop near the feet of a man standing by a carpentry stall. The man, Ucho, bent down to pick it up, brushing a bit of dust off the skin before holding it out with a warm smile. "Looks like you lost something," he said softly, his voice steady but kind. Alero smiled back, accepting the orange. "Thank you. I guess the wind had other plans for it," she replied, her voice light with humour. "You have to hold on tight around here," Ucho joked, his eyes meeting hers for a brief, unforgettable moment. That simple encounter marked the beginning of something special. Ucho was no ordinary man. Though he didn't have much, his heart was rich with kindness and humility. He owned a modest carpentry shop on the edge of the market, where he crafted sturdy tables, chairs, and beds with skillful hands. His work was known for its strength and beauty, just like the man himself. Alero found herself drawn to Ucho in ways she hadn't expected. He didn't speak loudly or boast like other young men in town. Instead, his quiet confidence and respectful nature stood out. Over time, their meetings became more frequent. Whenever Alero passed by his shop, Ucho would greet her with a smile, and their conversations grew longer and deeper. Ucho admired everything about Alero: her intelligence, her gentle heart, and the way she treated everyone with respect. To him, she was a rare gem, someone who made the world brighter just by being in it. Alero, in turn, found comfort in Ucho's sincerity. His dreams were simple but meaningful: to expand his carpentry business, care for his family, and build a future filled with love and stability. Their love blossomed quietly, like wildflowers in the hidden corners of the fields. They walked by the riverside on peaceful evenings, sharing dreams and stories under the golden hues of the setting sun. On clear nights, they sat beneath the stars, talking about their hopes for the future. Alero would listen to Ucho speak about how he wanted to craft a life where love and hard work thrived together. Despite the whispers from some townspeople who thought Alero was too good for a simple carpenter, she stood firm. She saw beyond social expectations and focused on Ucho's genuine heart. For Alero, true happiness wasn't found in riches, but in love built on respect and honesty. Their bond was strong, and their hearts were full of hope. Alero believed that together they could overcome any challenge life might throw their way. For a while, everything felt perfect. like they were living in their own little world of joy and possibilities. Neither of them knew that fate had its own tests waiting just around the corner. The sound of laughter filled the compound one sunny afternoon as Alero's family gathered for a special occasion. The aroma of jollof rice and grilled meat floated through the air while guests dressed in colorful clothes sat under large shade trees, enjoying the lively celebration. Alero moved gracefully among the visitors, helping to serve drinks and greet family friends. Her beauty and warmth shone like the afternoon sun, and everyone admired her kind nature. Among the guests was Ucho, who had been invited by Alero's father. He arrived looking neat and respectful in his simple but well-ironed clothes. Alero's heart fluttered when she saw him, and as they exchanged smiles, a silent but deep connection passed between them. Their joy and love for each other were evident to anyone who cared to notice, including Neca. Neca, Alero's stepmother, sat on a wooden bench nearby, pretending to enjoy the cheerful atmosphere. Her elegant wrapper was tied perfectly, and golden earrings sparkled against her smooth, dark skin. Neca had always prided herself on being the most beautiful woman wherever she went. She loved attention and admiration, even though she was already married to Alero's father. As she watched Alero laughing and talking with Ucho, something dark stirred within Neca. Her eyes narrowed, and a bitter jealousy gnawed at her heart. How dare this young girl, her stepdaughter, shine brighter than her? How dare she capture the affection of such a handsome and respectable man? Neca's mind raced. Despite being married, she couldn't ignore the sudden desire she felt for Ucho. He was strong, humble, and carried himself with quiet confidence. The way he looked at Alero filled Neca with envy. Alero already had beauty and intelligence. Now she also had a man who adored her. It was too much for Neca to bear. Throughout the gathering, Neca's eyes followed Ucho. She studied his every move, plotting ways to get closer to him. Her charm had always worked on men, and she believed Ucho would be no different. A smile crept onto her lips as a dangerous thought took root in her mind. If I can have him, why shouldn't I? Neca's obsession grew from that day. She began finding excuses to visit the market where Ucho's carpentry shop was located, pretending to need furniture repairs or advice on household projects. At first, Ucho was polite but distant, treating her as nothing more than his customer and Alero's stepmother. But Neca was clever and persistent. She knew how to weave sweet words and flattering compliments, planting seeds of doubt and confusion in Ucho's mind. Slowly, the seeds of betrayal began to take root, though Ucho didn't fully realize it yet. As the days passed, Neca's envy festered like a wound that wouldn't heal. Her desire for Ucho grew stronger, and she was willing to do whatever it took to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying Alero's happiness. Neca was a woman who knew how to get what she wanted. Her beauty was like a trap, dazzling on the surface but hiding danger beneath. From the moment she laid eyes on Ucho, she became determined to steal his attention away from Alero. What started as mere envy had grown into a burning obsession. She convinced herself that she deserved Ucho, even if it meant betraying her own family. She began her game carefully, planting her traps one step at a time. It started with seemingly innocent visits to Ucho's carpentry shop. "I need a new table for the house," she would say sweetly, her smile lingering just a little longer than necessary. "I hear no one in town can craft like you, Ucho." Her words dripped with flattery, and Ucho, though respectful, felt slightly uneasy. At first, he dismissed her compliments as harmless. After all, she was Alero's stepmother, and he wanted to remain polite. But Neca was relentless. She found every excuse to be near him, bringing baskets of food under the pretense of thanking him for hard work, or stopping by to admire his craftsmanship with exaggerated praise. "You have magic in your hands," she would whisper, leaning just a bit too close. Ucho would clear his throat awkwardly, trying to keep his mind clear, yet Neca's presence lingered even after she left, like a shadow that refused to fade. Despite his best efforts, Ucho found himself battling confusing thoughts. Neca was older, but undeniably attractive, and her charm was powerful. He hated himself for feeling tempted, but the subtle games Neca played began to wear down his defenses. Her flattery fed his ego, and her lingering glances made him question things he never should have doubted. Alero, oblivious at first, continued to love Ucho with all her heart. She noticed nothing unusual, trusting him completely. But then the distance began. Uche, who once couldn't wait to see her, started making excuses. "I've been busy at the shop," he would say when Alero asked why he hadn't visited. The warmth in his eyes seemed to flicker and fade, replaced by uncertainty. Alero's heart ached, though she tried to brush off the nagging feeling that something was wrong. "Maybe he's just stressed," she told herself, refusing to believe that the man she loved could hurt her. But deep down, the cracks in their once perfect relationship were growing. Uche, torn between guilt and temptation, withdrew further. He knew his feelings for Alero were real, yet Neca's persistence gnawed at him. He hated himself for even entertaining the thought of betraying Alero, but Neca's presence was like a storm cloud hovering over his life, impossible to ignore. Neca, seeing the confusion in Uche's eyes, knew she was winning. She thrived on his inner conflict, pushing him further away from Alero, without ever saying a single harsh word. Her deceit was subtle but powerful, and she wore her false innocence like a crown. Alero felt the distance like a knife to her heart. She couldn't understand why Uche was pulling away, but every missed visit, every empty excuse, deepened her pain. What had once been a love full of laughter and joy was now slipping through her fingers like sand, and she had no idea why. Neca's web of manipulation was tightening, and Uche, despite his love for Alero, was dangerously close to being caught. The battle between love and betrayal had only just begun, and Alero was about to face heartbreak she never saw coming. The once bright and joyful love between Alero and Uche had started to fade like a beautiful sunset swallowed by darkness. At first, Alero ignored the small signs, the missed visits, the short conversations, and the distant look in Uche's eyes. But as the days turned into weeks, it became impossible to pretend that everything was fine. Uche, who once made her feel like the most important person in the world, now seemed like a stranger standing on the other side of a widening gap. Alero's heart was heavy with confusion and pain. She tried to comfort herself with excuses. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe something at the shop is stressing him out. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Uche was slipping away from her, and she had no idea why. One evening, unable to bear the weight of her thoughts any longer, Alero decided to confront him. The golden hues of the setting sun cast long shadows on the dusty road as she made her way to his carpentry shop. Her steps were hesitant, but her heart was firm. She needed answers. When she arrived, Uche was bent over a wooden table, chiseling away at a piece of furniture. His once warm and eager smile was nowhere to be seen when he looked up and saw her. "Alero," he said, his tone stiff. "What brings you here?" Alero took a shaky breath, her voice soft but filled with determination. "Uche, what's going on? You've been distant, cold. Did I do something wrong?" Uche straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "You're imagining things, Alero," he said, avoiding her gaze. "I've just been busy with work, that's all. But you don't look at me the same." Alero whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You don't laugh with me anymore. You barely speak to me. I know something has changed. Please, just tell me the truth." Uche's jaw tightened. He wanted to tell her everything, about Neca's constant visits, her unsettling charm, and the confusion that had been eating at him. But shame held his words hostage. "There's nothing to tell," he said flatly. "You're overthinking things." Alero's heart cracked a little more at his cold response. "Uche, don't lie to me," she pleaded. "I can feel it. You're slipping away from me. Is there someone else?" "No!" Uche snapped, his voice louder than intended. "Alero, I love you. That hasn't changed." But Alero could see the truth in his eyes. A flicker of guilt that he couldn't hide. She wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to the love they had shared. But the weight of doubt was too heavy, crushing the fragile trust between them. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken pain. Finally, Alero nodded slowly, biting her trembling lip to keep from crying. "If you love me, then fight for us," she whispered, "because I can't do this alone." With that, she turned and walked away, her chest tightening with every step. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall until she was far from Uche's shop. Her heart ached like never before, torn between love and betrayal, trust and doubt. As she walked home under the fading light, Alero knew that something precious had been broken, and even though Uche had denied it, she felt in her soul that the man she loved was slipping away, drawn by shadows she couldn't yet see. The winds of betrayal blew through Alero's life like a storm she never saw coming. The distance between her and Uche had grown wider, and no matter how hard she tried to hold on, it felt like he was slipping further away. She prayed, hoped, and waited for things to go back to how they were. Back to when their love was pure and unbreakable. But fate had a cruel twist waiting for her. Neca, with her enchanting beauty and deceitful heart, had succeeded in her wicked plan. Day by day, she chipped away at Uche's resolve with sweet words and lingering glances. Uche, confused and tempted, found himself drawn into Neca's web. Her presence was intoxicating, and before he knew it, lines that should never have been crossed were shattered. What started as subtle flirtation had now turned into a full-blown affair. Neca was clever. She knew how to hide their sinful meetings from the watchful eyes of the community. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves when least expected. One quiet afternoon, Alero decided to take a walk by the river to clear her mind. The cool breeze kissed her skin as she made her way through the familiar path lined with tall trees. The riverbank had always been her favorite place, a peaceful spot where she and Uche once shared dreams and laughter under the sky. Today, she hoped to find some comfort there, but as she drew closer to the clearing, she heard voices, soft laughter mixed with whispered words. Her heart froze. She knew that voice. It was Uche's. Curiosity mixed with unease pushed Alero forward, her steps slow and hesitant. What she saw next shattered her world. There, hidden among the trees, were Uche and Neca. Neca's hand rested lightly on his chest, and they stood far too close for comfort. Uche, the man she had loved with all her heart, was looking at her stepmother with an expression that Alero knew too well, one of longing and surrender. A gasp escaped Alero's lips before she could stop it. The sound cut through the air like a blade. Uche and Neca turned sharply, their faces filled with shock and guilt. "Alero," Uche began, but his voice broke as if he couldn't find the right words. Neca, ever composed, smirked slightly, as though caught but unbothered by the consequences. "Oh dear, Alero," she said smoothly. "I didn't think you'd be here." Alero's chest heaved as pain and betrayal flooded her entire being. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "How could you, Uche?" she whispered, each word heavy with heartbreak. "How could you do this to me?" Uche stood frozen, guilt written all over his face. He had no defense, no excuse. Alero didn't wait for an answer. Her world had already crumbled, and staying any longer would only deepen the wound. With tears streaming down her face, she turned and ran, the sound of her sobs blending with the rustling leaves. As she fled from the scene of her heartbreak, Alero's mind raced with disbelief and pain. The man she had trusted with her heart, and the woman who was supposed to be a mother figure, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Her heart shattered into pieces that day by the riverbank, and Alero knew that life would never be the same again. News spreads fast in small towns, like dry leaves caught in a wild wind. It didn't take long before whispers of Uche and Neca's shameful affair filled every corner of the community. From the busy market stalls to the church steps, people talked in hushed tones, their eyes wide with shock and curiosity. "Did you hear?" one woman whispered to another as they sold yams by the roadside. "Alero's own stepmother stole her man." "I always knew that Neca was trouble," another added with a smug nod. "Her beauty is just a mask for a wicked heart." The scandal was on everyone's lips. Young girls whispered about it on their way to fetch water, and elders shook their heads in disappointment during evening gatherings. Uche, once admired for his hard work and humble nature, was now seen as weak and dishonorable. But while he avoided public places, hiding from the weight of his shame, Neca basked in the attention. Instead of showing remorse, Neca carried herself with pride, walking through the town as if she had won a prize. Her head was held high, and her smile never wavered. If people whispered behind her back, she didn't care. In fact, she seemed to enjoy the drama, feeding off the chaos she had caused. Alero, on the other hand, was crushed by the weight of humiliation. Everywhere she went, she felt the sting of pitying glances and judgmental stares. Women clucked their tongues in sympathy when they saw her, while others whispered cruelly. "Poor Alero," they said. "How embarrassing to be betrayed by your own stepmother." The pain was unbearable. Alero tried to go about her daily life, but the gossip followed her like a shadow. She kept her head down, fighting back tears as she passed by people who once greeted her warmly, but now only offered awkward smiles or silence. Even at home, the tension was suffocating. Her father, oblivious to the full truth, sensed that something was wrong, but couldn't put his finger on it. Neca played the perfect wife at home, pretending nothing had happened. Her deceit knew no bounds. Despite the humiliation, Alero held on to a quiet strength. Deep down, she knew that her worth wasn't defined by Ucho's betrayal or Neca's wickedness. Though her heart ached and her pride was wounded, she silently promised herself that she would rise above the gossip and find a way to heal. The town might have been busy talking about her now, but Alero knew that her story wasn't over. And when the time came, she would prove to everyone, including herself, that broken hearts could mend and dignity could be reclaimed. Alero's days were filled with silence and pain. The betrayal by Ucho and Neca had left a deep wound in her heart, one that no words could heal. Each morning she forced herself out of bed, carrying a heaviness that made every step feel like a struggle. The once cheerful young woman, full of dreams and laughter, now moved through life quietly, as though the world had lost its color. Her father, Chief Obi, remained clueless about the storm raging in his daughter's life. He was a busy and respected man, known for his wisdom and fair judgment in the community. But even the wisest of men can be blind to matters of the heart. Whenever Alero's quiet mood caught his attention, Neca quickly dismissed it. "She's just growing up, Obi," Neca would say with a sweet but false smile. "Young women can be moody sometimes." Her words always seemed to satisfy him, and he never pressed further. But Alero carried her heartbreak alone. She couldn't confide in her father. How could she tell him that the woman he trusted had betrayed their family? Instead, Alero turned to the only source of comfort she knew: God. Late at night, when the household was asleep, Alero would kneel by her bed, tears streaming down her face. "God," she whispered through her sobs, "please give me strength. My heart is broken, but I know you see my pain. Help me to forgive, even when it feels impossible. Help me to heal." Her prayers were filled with raw honesty, each word a plea for peace. She asked not only for healing, but for the courage to rise above the humiliation and bitterness that threatened to consume her. Though her pain didn't vanish overnight, Alero found small moments of peace through her faith. She began to spend more time reading scriptures and reflecting on their meaning. One verse in particular stayed with her: "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." These words became her source of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, she was not alone. The community's gossip still lingered, and Neca's presence in the house was a constant reminder of betrayal. Yet, Alero's spirit, though wounded, began to rebuild itself slowly. She realized that her strength did not come from Ucho's love or the approval of the townspeople. It came from within, guided by her unwavering faith. Alero's silent struggle continued, but with every prayer, every tear, and every whispered plea to God, she grew stronger. Her journey toward healing had begun, and though the road ahead was long, Alero knew she would not walk it alone. Neca had always been admired for her breathtaking beauty. People often said she looked like a goddess with smooth, glowing skin and eyes that sparkled like the morning sun. But something strange began to happen. Bit by bit, the very beauty she had used to manipulate and deceive started to fade like a flower wilting under the harsh sun. It started subtly. Neca woke up one morning and noticed dark patches on her once flawless skin. "It's just stress," she told herself, brushing it off. But as days turned into weeks, the changes became more obvious. Her hair lost its shine, her skin became rough, and wrinkles appeared where none had been before. The woman who once turned heads now received puzzled glances and whispers behind her back. Neca tried every remedy she could think of. expensive creams, secret herbal mixtures, and long visits to the village healer, but nothing worked. The more she struggled to hold on to her beauty, the faster it seemed to slip away. At the same time, misfortune struck Uchi's carpentry business. Orders that once flowed in steadily suddenly stopped. Longtime customers found other craftsmen, claiming that Uchi's work wasn't reliable anymore. Tools broke unexpectedly, wood deliveries were delayed, and payments were left unpaid. "What is happening to me?" Uche muttered one evening as he stared at his empty workshop. His hands, once skilled and confident, now trembled with doubt. The once proud and respected craftsman was now a man haunted by failure. Rumors began to spread through the town. "It's karma," some whispered. "God doesn't sleep. Neca's betrayal and Uche's weakness have brought this upon them." Neca's pride began to crumble as fast as her beauty faded. The confident woman who once strutted through the town now avoided public places, hiding her face behind scarves. Even her once sharp tongue grew silent, replaced by fear and confusion. Uche, too, was weighed down by guilt and regret. His heart was tormented not only by his failing business, but also by the shame of having betrayed Alero, the woman who had loved him without conditions. The strange events seemed like punishment from a force greater than either of them could understand. Neca and Uche, who once thought they had control over their lives, were now facing a reckoning they had never expected. The downfall had begun, and there was no escaping it. Neca's troubles did not end with her fading beauty. One morning, she woke up feeling weak, her body trembling as though weighed down by an invisible force. "It's just a little sickness," she told herself, brushing it off. But as the days went by, her condition worsened. She could barely eat, her body ached constantly, and a strange rash covered her skin. Desperate, Chief Obi brought the best healers from neighboring villages, but none of them could find a cure. "It's beyond herbs and roots," one healer said grimly. "This sickness comes from the spirit." Neca's illness became the talk of the town. People whispered about her downfall, convinced that divine punishment had finally caught up with her. "God doesn't forget," one elderly woman said at the marketplace. "She stole Alero's happiness, and now look, sickness has stolen her beauty and strength." Some people pitied her, but most believed she was getting what she deserved. "This is justice," they said, "a lesson for those who think they can betray others without consequences." Neca, once proud and arrogant, was now bedridden, a shadow of her former self. Her enchanting beauty had completely vanished, replaced by pale, scarred skin and sunken eyes. The same woman who once strutted confidently through the streets now lay weak and helpless, unable to lift her head from her pillow. Even Uche, who had once been charmed by Neca, stayed away. His guilt weighed heavily on him, and his failing business left him with no time or energy to care for her. Neca was alone, abandoned by the very people who once admired her. Lying on her bed, Neca often thought of Alero, the kind-hearted young woman she had wronged. As her illness dragged on, she realized that no healer could cure her because her sickness wasn't just of the body, it was of the soul. The betrayal, envy, and deceit she had sown had now come back to haunt her. The community saw her suffering as a clear sign of divine retribution, proof that justice, though sometimes delayed, would always prevail. And while Neca's heart was filled with regret, she knew deep down that forgiveness was the only thing that might bring her peace, if it wasn't already too late. Uche's life was falling apart. His once thriving carpentry business had crumbled, leaving him buried in debt. Customers no longer trusted him, and friends who once admired his hard work now kept their distance. But what hurt Uche the most wasn't his financial ruin. It was the guilt eating away at his heart. He had lost Alero, the woman who truly loved him, because of his weakness and foolishness. Day and night, memories of Alero haunted him. He remembered her gentle smile, her kindness, and the way she stood by him when no one else did. "I betrayed the best thing that ever happened to me," Uche admitted to himself bitterly. The more he thought about it, the heavier his heart became. One bright afternoon, unable to bear the guilt any longer, Uche decided to seek Alero out. He found her by the riverbank, the place where their love had once bloomed. Alero sat quietly, the breeze gently lifting her hair. She looked peaceful, yet distant, as though she had built a wall around her heart to protect it from more pain. "Alero," Uchi called softly, his voice trembling with regret. She turned slowly, her eyes calm but guarded. "What do you want, Uche?" she asked, her tone steady but firm. Uche's chest tightened. "I came to say I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was a fool. I let Neca's lies and charms destroy what we had. I've lost everything, Alero. But losing you is the worst pain of all. Please, forgive me." Alero looked at him for a long moment. Her heart still ached from the betrayal, but she had grown stronger since those dark days. She had learned to find peace within herself, without relying on Uchi or anyone else to make her happy. "I've already forgiven you, Uchi," Alero said softly, surprising him. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll forget, and it doesn't mean I want you back in my life." Uchi's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Alero," he begged. "Give me another chance. I'll make things right, I swear." Alero shook her head gently. "You broke my heart, Uche. I've moved on. I deserve a love that respects me, values me, and doesn't fall for deceit. I hope you find peace, but that peace isn't with me." Uche knew then that he had lost her forever. Her words, though kind, were final. She had grown beyond the girl who once depended on his love. She had become a strong, independent woman who knew her worth. As Alero walked away, Uchi stood there, overwhelmed by regret, but knowing he had no one to blame but himself. He had learned a hard lesson, one he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The pain Alero had endured could have broken her, but instead, it shaped her into a stronger and wiser woman. After everything she had been through, Uche's betrayal, the humiliation from the gossip, and Neca's cruelty, Alero realized she had two choices: to remain a victim or rise above the hurt and create a better life for herself. She chose to rise. Alero decided to focus on the one thing that no one could ever take from her, her dreams. She returned to her studies with renewed determination, pouring her energy into learning and self-improvement. Books became her new companions, and education became her path to freedom. While others spent time talking about her past, Alero was busy building her future. At first, it wasn't easy. There were days when the memories of betrayal weighed heavily on her heart, but she refused to let them hold her back. "My worth is not defined by what happened to me," she reminded herself. "It's defined by what I do next." As time passed, Alero's hard work began to pay off. She excelled in her studies and caught the attention of mentors who saw her potential. Opportunities started opening up, and Alero embraced each one with courage and gratitude. She became confident, self-assured, and driven, a woman who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to go after it. The people in the community noticed her transformation. "Look at Alero," they said with admiration. She didn't let heartbreak destroy her. She's stronger now. Even those who once pitied her were inspired by her resilience. Alero's journey from pain to purpose became a story of hope for many young women in the town. She proved that heartbreak was not the end, but rather a beginning, a chance to grow, learn, and thrive. Alero's heart was still open to love, but this time she knew she would never settle for less than she deserved. More importantly, she had learned to love herself first. With her eyes set on a bright future, Alero walked forward confidently, ready to conquer whatever life had in store. Neca was no longer the proud and beautiful woman the town once admired. Her mysterious illness had left her weak, pale, and bedridden. The woman who once walked with her head high was now abandoned by everyone, including the friends who used to flatter her. Even Chief Obi, who once trusted her completely, kept his distance. Disappointed and heartbroken by her actions, lonely and filled with regret, Neca thought constantly of Alero, the stepdaughter she had wronged so deeply. She remembered the way Alero had always been kind and respectful, even when Neca had treated her coldly. Guilt gnawed at her heart. Neca knew that only one thing might give her peace now: Alero's forgiveness. One afternoon, with trembling hands and a weak voice, Neca sent a servant to call Alero. She whispered, "Please," her voice barely audible, "bring her to me." When Alero arrived, she stood by the doorway for a moment, silently observing the frail figure of the woman who had once caused her so much pain. Neca's face was thin and pale, her eyes sunken with suffering. The confident, manipulative stepmother was gone, replaced by someone desperate and broken. "Alero," Neca rasped, tears glistening in her eyes. I know I don't deserve your kindness. I hurt you in ways I can never undo, but please, forgive me." Alero's heart was heavy. Seeing Neca like this stirred many emotions: sadness, pity, and even anger. But Alero had grown beyond bitterness. She knew that holding on to resentment would only harm her spirit. "I forgive you, Neca," Alero said softly, her voice steady but firm. "Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Tears streamed down Neca's face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "But remember," Alero continued gently, "betrayal has consequences. You hurt people, and now you're facing the result of those choices. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past." Neca nodded weakly, understanding the truth in Alero's words. She had paid a heavy price for her jealousy and deceit. As Alero turned to leave, Neca watched her with a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. Alero's forgiveness had lifted a burden from her heart, but she knew the road to redemption was one she would have to walk alone. Alero walked out of the room with her head held high, feeling lighter. She had freed herself from the chains of resentment, proving once again that true strength lies in forgiveness and wisdom. Life had finally begun to smile on Alero again. After years of heartache and struggle, she had built a bright future for herself. Her education had opened doors to a successful career, and she became known not only for her intelligence, but for her kindness and resilience. The townspeople admired her strength, saying, "Alero is a woman who turned pain into power." One sunny afternoon, as Alero attended a community event, she met someone who would change her life forever. His name was Chique, a kind-hearted, confident, and respectful young man. He had recently returned to town after completing his studies abroad. Unlike others who were impressed only by Alero's beauty, Chique was drawn to her inner strength and wisdom. They began talking, and their conversations flowed effortlessly, filled with laughter and shared dreams. Chique admired how Alero had overcome her past with such grace. "You are remarkable, Alero," he said sincerely. "You've built a life of dignity and success despite everything." Alero, who had once thought her heart was too broken for love, found herself smiling more around Chique. His gentle respect and unwavering support were different from anything she had known before. He didn't try to charm her with empty promises. He valued her for who she truly was. As months passed, their bond deepened. Chique stood by Alero as a true partner, celebrating her achievements and encouraging her dreams. He never sought to control or diminish her. Instead, he lifted her higher. One evening, under the golden glow of the setting sun, Chique looked into Alero's eyes and said, "I want to walk this journey of life with you, side by side, as equals." Alero's heart, once scarred by betrayal, now overflowed with joy. She had found a love that was pure, respectful, and true. More than that, she'd found happiness within herself long before Chique entered her life, and that made her love even stronger. Their story became a symbol of hope in the community. Alero's journey was proof that broken hearts can heal, and life always offers new beginnings. She had found both love and success on her terms, and her future was brighter than ever before. Alero's journey was one of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak, but it was also a story of strength, forgiveness, and triumph. Despite the wounds life had inflicted, she rose above the challenges, refusing to be defined by sorrow. Her heart, once shattered, healed as she built a future filled with purpose, dignity, and true happiness. Neca, blinded by jealousy, learned the hard truth that beauty without goodness is empty. Her deceit led to her downfall, showing that betrayal and cruelty always come with consequences. Ucho too paid the price for his weakness and dishonesty, learning too late that true love should never be taken for granted. But perhaps the greatest lesson was in Alero's ability to forgive. Even when hurt deeply, she chose to let go of anger and resentment. Her forgiveness did not erase what had been done, but it freed her from bitterness and allowed her to find peace. The people in the town saw her as a symbol of resilience. "Alero is living proof," they said, "that no matter how dark the storm, the sun will shine again." In the end, Alero's story reminded everyone that life may not always be fair, but justice, whether divine or natural, has a way of finding its path. Forgiveness brings peace, resilience builds strength, and those who stay true to themselves will always find new beginnings. Alero's happiness was not just a reward. It was a victory earned through wisdom, courage, and faith.